Anyway, hi everybody. I'm Howard Yourow, and I'm going to talk about saving the Gould Memorial Library and surrounding buildings, which you may know from as the old or uptown campus of New York University at University Heights. Now, currently, and since the early 70s, the campus of Bronx Community College of the City University. But just to start at the beginning, what's this baby here?
Pantheon.
The Pantheon
In Rome.
in Rome. Who's seen the Pantheon in the flesh? Yeah. Who loves the Pantheon? In the flesh, or in photograph. I love the Pantheon, and
Is it a big building? It looks pretty big in the picture.
the Pantheon is a large structure, but it's not gigantic. No. Okay, the Pantheon comes down to us intact. The entire building intact from its ancient Roman builders, which makes it, I think, the only great building of ancient Rome, of the city, that is still intact, of the great monuments. We know the Colosseum, but it's ruined, and so on. So the Pantheon's intact. Now we have to switch to, and it was built on both within 100 or so years of Jesus' life on either side, 150 or something like that. So it goes back a couple of thousand years. So, okay, now we're going to go to the late 19th century in the Bronx. Going to jump a little bit.
I wonder why the other buildings in Rome fell apart while the Pantheon stayed intact.
I'm sorry?
I wonder why the other buildings in Rome fell apart while the Pantheon stayed intact. Why couldn't they all have stayed kept up?
Oops, did I get? No. Sorry. I wanted to get that picture of the.
There's a picture.
There's a lot.
You had a good one.
This guy. Yeah. Well, of course, you're asking one of the huge questions of preservation. Why do things fall apart, right? Why do buildings fall apart? Time.
Yeah. But they were
Neglect.
The Pantheon up, how come they couldn't keep
Warfare.
What's that?
I think it's kind of a miracle that the Pantheon has survived intact.
Yeah.
But it raises an interesting question about our baby here, which is all of little more than a century old, and now in dire need of the help that Save Gould Library Group is trying to get it. Whereas the Pantheon, is 2,000 years old and still intact and still in good repair. But anyway, this is the Gould Memorial Library when it was brand new. And New York University, of course, we know NYU from Greenwich Village, Washington Square. And it started, of course, downtown. But in the 1890s, the city had become, that the downtown had become very busy and very noisy and very polluted and all of that kind of thing. And some NYU folks started to make noise, and they said, maybe we've got to, maybe we have to get back to the bucolic countryside kind of idea of the campus. How about if we look around for a new spot, and we won't move the whole university, but let's take the undergraduate college. Let's take University College, the basic college, and maybe we should move it out away from the hustle and bustle of the city. And the major mover for NYU was the chancellor of the university at the time. His name was Henry Mitchell McCracken. And McCracken went shopping around for architects, and he found McKim, Mead, and White, the great firm of its day. And the partner that was who assigned himself actually to the project was none other than Stanford White, the great genius of the Gilded Age. And White went on a shopping trip with McCracken to look at property around the city to see where they could find this nice spot for what might become this new campus for the college. And they went up to the Bronx, to the Midwest Bronx, on a beautiful bluff overlooking the Harlem River. Maybe Bronx geography. Oh, everybody knows where Yankee Stadium is?
Yeah.
If you go about, oh? Oh. Well, there, yeah, one next door, yeah. 161st.
Well, 61st,
Yeah.
but the college.
But right, the college. So if you could take a look at the map later or whatever. But if you go just about a mile or so, a little more north, due north of the stadium, you're at the what's now since these times called University Heights neighborhood in the Midwest. What we used to call, I grew up in the neighborhood, the Midwest Bronx. So they found this beautiful spot, which was an estate actually. It was a private estate, and they took it. They bought it. And then White went to work on a master plan for the entire campus, which was about 55 acres or so. So it's a nice, it's a relatively large piece of property. And he designed the library as the centerpiece of the campus. So it was designed first. And along with the library itself, obviously using the Pantheon as his model. And with the library, let me see if there are two flanking buildings, the Halls of Language and Philosophy. Let me see if I can find those guys. Oh, wait, more images. Let's see. Ah, maybe this one gives idea. Yeah. So he designed the library with two flanking buildings called the Halls of Language and Philosophy. And there was an engineering problem with shoring up the backside of the library, which is on a very steep bluff. And originally they had the idea to build this huge wall, just a large retaining wall behind it. And then McCracken, working very closely with White, the NYU chancellor, said, somebody came up with this idea. I'm not exactly sure how it bubbled up. He said, you know what? Let's do something with that space behind the library that would fit the structural needs of shoring up, but also add a dimension on the other side because, of course, you have a fabulous view over northern Manhattan and beyond to the Hudson River and the Palisades of New Jersey. So it's a fantastic view. So he said we could also get a view in. So they came up with this guy. Huh? The Hall of Fame for Great Americans. And McCracken conceived this hall as a colonnade to ring the library in its rear with busts of great Americans, kind of an American Valhalla. It's the first Hall of Fame in American history. And it was built alongside the Gould Library and the two flanking buildings. Now, they were completed very early after the turn of the century, as White was working on the master plan for the whole campus. But a most unfortunate thing happened, not only for Stanford White, but also for, not only for the campus itself, but of course for the course of architectural history, perhaps, certainly for the beautification and neoclassical building in New York. And what happened, most tragically and unfortunately? Right. You know, another part of the White was this great colorful character. He had a lot going on in his life. He had a lot of girlfriends. And he had had a relationship with a girl named Evelyn Nesbit, who was a young beauty some years before. This was some years before the time of the library. And there was a relationship with Nesbit. Well, you know, there was a lot of that. But the point is that at this point in time, Nesbit got married to a guy. What was his name? Harry K. Thaw, who was the scion of a very rich and powerful Pittsburgh, I believe they were from Pittsburgh industrial family. And Harry Thaw had a bug about this thing that Stanford White had with Evelyn Nesbit. Yeah, it was at least 10 years before, or whenever it was. But he had a bug about it. And in 1906, I forgot, it was in June, I think, it was in the summer, one night, White was on the rooftop of where? Madison Square Garden, the original garden, which he was the architect of, yeah. He went to some show there, and Thaw, who had been, you know, contemplating the act, gunned him down at this event. So this wonderful project stopped. McKinley did not pick it up or forward it after White's death. So what got built, these wonderful pieces, that was the beginning and the end of the project. So I'm always in the fantasy of, oh my gosh, what if Stanley had been able to, you know, do the whole campus? It would have been just unbelievable. Nonetheless, he left us with these fabulous buildings. So NYU goes on and on. Now, everything changes, right? The only constant is change. 3 generations later, the Bronx is changing. Yeah? The bucolic Bronx had been greatly developed since the 1920s, right? And the waves of immigrants and so on. Well, the neighborhood changed again quite radically in the 60s and into the 70s. And in those changes and other financial problems that NYU was having at the time, they decided in the late 60s to look for a buyer for the Uptown campus. And they found a buyer in CUNY, the City University. And they got a pretty good price for the campus. I think it was $55 million or something in early 70s dollars. It was a deal. So NYU left the Heights and went back, took the college, the University College, its original arts college, back down to Washington Square. And Bronx Community got this fantastic campus, including these wonderful buildings for itself. Now, over that time, well, what is it, 45 years or so since that? Yeah, going on a half a century since all of that happened. The Gould Library and the Hall of Fame and the flanking buildings. Wait, you want to see the inside of Gould too, because it is fantastic. How do we get inside Gould?
So this thing actually got built anyway, this back part.
Yes,
Yeah, it still got built anyway.
it did. Let me see. Yeah, wait, will that do it? Yeah, there's some interior shots there, right? Yeah. Oops. Something different. Wait, what did I, up. Where were we? So, yeah, the interior of Gould. Oh, the point was, yeah, that the package has since become a New York City, New York State, and National Historic Landmark. And the interior of Gould, if I'm not mistaken, is also city landmark. And as you can just see, it's spectacularly beautiful. Really, the neoclassic of the neoclassic. The main reading room, the old main reading room, is the rotunda of the building. There was a beautiful, this is an auditorium that is just underneath the floor of the main reading room. It's now called the auditorium. It was called the chapel back in those days. I went to college here, so I'm class of 70 here, just before, in the last days of the last NYU days at the Heights. The chapel was all wood and Tiffany window and so on, but it was destroyed in a Molotov cocktail attack during the Vietnam era troubles, and was restored. A nice restoration, but nothing like it looked in the old days. But so the point is that the buildings, since have been our city, state, and national landmark. So what is our problem? Our problem is that because of various and sundry, which I can go into some detail, Gould and its surrounding buildings and the Hall of Fame have kind of just sat there, being beautiful and doing nothing for almost half a century. And to your foundation question, how come how come things survive or don't survive? Time and, the weather and so on have taken their toll. So since Gould has not been in use for half a century, there's a lot of brick and mortar problem with it, from the top to the bottom. The roof, the works. So the issue now for us is basically, there are two issues. One, raising the money to restore the package and secure it for the future. And two, what to do, how to repurpose this incredibly beautiful space, both as a campus asset and also as a community asset, and maybe as to think of it in larger terms as a city asset. Now, of course, this location is still relatively exotic for many folks, right? Has anybody ever who's been to the Heights? Oh, yeah. But one of its the thing that made it so part of what made it so beautiful back in its beginning, that it was removed from the city, yeah. And then you put these beautiful things in this relatively, that's become, that's turned on itself, because now folks say, well, yeah, where is that? That kind of thing. Yeah, I heard it, maybe even if they've heard about it. I know it's there, but it's far away, right? Far from Manhattan, or hard to get to. Hard to get to if you want to visit. It's not that hard to get to, but you have to take the train, about, let's say from Grand Central, maybe 45 minutes. And then do a little walk from the number 4 line up.
Howard, about 35 minutes.
35, all right, plus walking time and so on.
No, not even that. I said no, because Riverdale is 30. About 20, 25.
From Grand Central?
25 max.
If the 4 is...
No, that's like railroad from Grand Central.
But if you take the 4 subway, then it's going to take a little longer, right? So...
They no longer have the train station behind. They used to have a station stop on the train.
No, there's an active station. University Heights Station exists. If you want to take the train from Grand Central, it works, which is a very nice way to do it. Yeah, it's still there. But most people might think of the subway. So if you put it together, it's a little bit of a trip. It's worth it, of course, but one of its problems is that it's a little bit out of the way. Sorry, Allison. Yeah.
So Bronx Community College is no longer operating?
No, Bronx Community College is operating.
So they are using the building?
Well, not using the building. That's one of the things. It's just sat because Bronx Community had, I'm trying to, I think a fair statement, the Bronx Community's focus over this period of time has not necessarily been on saving the beautiful old buildings, but on building its educational programs for its people. And another thing, a good thing happened, very recently completed, for Bronx Community College, which also took time and money away from the preservation effort on these buildings. And it is Robert A.M. Stern's library, BCC. Will that get it? No. Bronx Community College Library. Yeah. Let me see. See photos. Oh, no. I don't know who that is. Did I have the library, the new one? No. Can you see? Yeah. Because Gould was abandoned as a library and all the resources and assets taken out of it and then brought back to Washington Square by NYU, there was no, really good working library for the BCC campus. And time goes by so quickly. But when was Stern's library open? Not 5 or 6 years ago, 7 years ago?
2012.
Oh, okay. So maybe 6 years ago. So CUNY spent about, I think the price tag was about $95 million. It's pretty hefty. And Stern came up and built a very beautiful new library in the, as an homage really to White. It's a nice piece. It's a great library. It's great for campus, of course, but I think that part of the problem was that the focus over the years became building a new library, and that spending a lot of money on that library also took focus and resources from thinking about how to keep the classical beauties in good condition. But now that this one is obviously finished and working, there's been a shift back to thinking about how to first of all the fundraising campaign to save the Stanford Whites, and second what to do with the old library. There's a new administration of Bronx Community College. They have a new president. He has expressed great interest in saving the old beauties and in working with Save Gould Library, which is a collection of kind of the rest of the world that's interested in the project. Work with him, work with Bronx Community, work with CUNY on raising the money, and also brainstorming repurposing the building. So that's a hopeful sign. But nonetheless, the challenge is quite great. I'll tell you how desperate I am. I said to Betsy Gottbaum a few weeks ago, do you know who Betsy Gottbaum is? She's a great lady. She's very active in civic affairs. She was the public advocate, is that right? A few terms back. I think she's the president of this.
She's a parks commissioner.
She's also parks commissioner.
Under the Dinkins administration.
Yeah. So she's been around, and I saw her at something. I said, we're trying to save Gould up in the Bronx. She said, oh, yeah, it's so fantastic. And so on. I said, well, who's around who maybe could make a major gift so we could get this baby rolling? I mean, kind of the Bernie Sanders approach, I'm not sure it's going to work, on this one, because the price tag is maybe 75 mil, and things tend to cost more, right, and take longer, usually, projects do. So I said, what about the president? I meant of the United States of America. I said, he's got a lot of dough, right? I mean, he's his name on all kinds of stuff. You think he'd want his name on, a beautiful classical thing like this? She said, not a chance. He's the cheapest bastard you ever met. She said, he never gives any of his own money. He doesn't give his own. He never gives any of his own money to anything. So forget it. But anyway, I asked. You have to make the ask, because you don't know who knows who, and so on like that.
How about some of the alumni from
Well, one of the things, of course, that now here's another. Every project has its exquisite problem, right? What about NYU? Well, it was NYU, but it's not NYU. So the great, mass of the NYU machine's not interested in this anymore. It's interested in building up its own university. Now, of course, there are living alumni community from the Heights. So that's one of the targets. But of course, that you're competing with NYU for their, for their attention. No, even folks who graduated. Yeah.
If you graduated in 1950 at this campus and you've been to the Gould, you've gone to some of these courses, these places, why not?
I know. But everybody, also some people feel, they have a lot of nostalgia for the places they went to school and so on. And others don't really. It was a stage in their life and they go on. That's one of the issues around this NYU thing.
Howard, I was under the impression that several $100,000 were required from New York State to do at the very least a basic stabilization, if not a project plan for this space?
Right. There have been pieces and parts which are going on. There have been pieces and parts along the way. And money has been raised for a new study of the entire project and what it's going to need. So it's not like there hasn't been anything. But when we're talking about the major lift to do the full plan, this is another problem. And the NYU, for example, a good buddy of mine, happened to be in my class, is a really big time, very important lawyer in New York. He's the chairman of one of the firms. He knows everybody, blah, 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 blah. He was in my class up there. But he also happens to be the chair of the NYU Board of Trustees. So he's raising money for the old school, but the old school doesn't include the old campus anymore. It's one of these little exquisite problems. Every project has its own little quirky thing. That's one of them for us.
Did I read that Sam White?
Oh, sorry. Mea culpa. I've been talking without. Sam White, who's a very, very nice fellow and an architect in his own right, who is the great-grandson of Stanford White, is the chair of this effort. So it's very nice to have that personal connection. And of course, he's really, doing his bit and really trying to spread the word and so on. So, and that's a good thing. That's right.
About 2 years ago, I went to open house, and Sam White gave us a tour.
Right.
Even to see the chair where his great-grandfather used to sit.
Nice.
Of the entire place. And the basement area, right now is a lot of storage and stuff, could be converted, and this is what I had thought, and he had not heard of what I was suggesting, which was why not turn the Gould Library into a co-working space for people in the Bronx.
Mm-hmm.
And co-working space would be where, you're starting a new company, and then you go to a place where you get Wi-Fi, and you get your electricity and stuff, and you pay a certain amount of money per month just for a table or, a chair.
Right, like the WeWork kind of idea and that kind of business. That's yes.
WeWork actually is doing a lot of stuff in other places with old buildings and renovating them and turning them into co-working space. And this would be a way that people in the Bronx who are starting a business, tech or whatever, they would be able to have that kind of, at least in the below, in the bottom part, and maybe do conference rooms up on top.
Yeah, because you have the rotunda space, the great space, which is a fantastic event space, for example. I mean, it's just, you can't get a better event space anywhere. It's gorgeous. But that one of the problems there would be, how to get folks, how to get event planners. We have to spread the word so that people who do this kind of thing know that there's a fabulous space up there, that people don't know about. And the auditorium, of course, also for meetings and so on. But there's a large amount of room in the basement and around the rotunda for other use. Yeah. So the brainstorming is going on now as to how to do it, what to do with it. But first, we really need, some major gifts to get the momentum going on the fundraising. Yes, ma'am.
Well, I was thinking maybe you can do a video of the space, show the building, parts of it, and actually see people talk about maybe former students, people who work there, and
Right.
promotion and everything.
There are a couple out.
And
Yeah, there are a couple that have been done and that are available. Yes.
and then you get some famous people who can advocate saving it, like contact famous people. Like there was one incident where I saw a house on television that a family lived in, and they did a whole family story, and going back to their grandparents, great-grandparents, and their experience growing up there and everything. And they had this whole history about the house, and then eventually the family had to sell because they couldn't keep it anymore. And somebody bought it. They were afraid it was going to be torn down, but the people who came along and bought it because they saw the video,
Mm-hmm.
and they fixed it up to live in it themselves. So that's what.
Yeah, there is a good video from, if anybody wants to be in touch with that, there's a good video from BCC. PBS has done some good work on it. And so there is, those resources, are available.
How about crowdfunding?
Yes, but with the price tag as it is, I'm just not sure we can get the momentum that we need from that.
Like
I mean,
an angel investor, and tell them it's a tax.
Again, I think you have to look from ground up and also, from top down, as it were. And we're trying to do both of those. Yes, ma'am.
How do you break down, I'm involved in looking for funding for the Bowery Alliance. And you mentioned state, city, and federal. Do you go to each category? How do you delegate what you ask for or what you think you can possibly get from each section?
Well, right. Well, yeah, it's complicated, but for example, you want to deal with your city council person in the district for the, as a liaison into city possibilities. And then the state, the assembly or senators who are representing the district up here on the state, which we have been doing. And then, go to the federals, the congressperson and so on to see if there's federal money. But, and again, it's a combination, right? We're going to look at public funds, but also private funds. Because for a project of this size, we can't rely just on the, on the hope that eventually you could put enough public funds together. I don't think it'll work.
Well, if you reach out for private funds, would it help not to have already gotten funds?
Yes, of course.
Your segment, therefore you begin to.
Yes, and as Simeon mentioned, I mean, there are the bits and pieces of shoring up work and so on, and study work are coming from the governments, but not in a major way. So that's kind of the major problem. It's a bit of a variation. It's not, securing landmarking or districting or the problems that we hear about so often with so many other projects that we're dealing with, but really raising the money to preserve and also I think it's less of a problem because there's so many ideas for use, repurposing the building. But it does say even the repurpose has a little bit of a special problem because it's on a campus, removed from the neighborhood, and then at that wherever the heck that is up in the Bronx. So it's a little bit of a distance physically and psychologically. So we have to divide between campus use and perhaps larger use. But hell, if you're going to have a big party or a wedding or something like that, I mean, it's just a spectacular interior to throw events in the rotunda or the dome of the library.
across the bridge at 250, you're anywhere around there. You know
Yes.
It's there.
True.
And maybe psychologically, you need to also improve the sense that it's not just over there in the Bronx, it's part of our,
It's part of the northern New York. And that's right.
It's used for movies all the time.
Yes, it has been used for movies. We were just talking about The Greatest Showman. And there have been movie uses, along the way. And that's not going to rescue the thing, but you do see pieces and parts of Gould and the surrounding buildings in film ever since I think when we were in college there. Goodbye Columbus was shot there, or one of those. Yeah, so it has been used in film for quite a long time. It's probably actually a long list of film by this time. Do we have to go? Maybe we have to go. Another minute or two? Okay. Yes, sir.
What is your role in this?
So I'm a 70 graduate of college, and I've always I feel very obviously strongly about the place and all of that. So those of us who are outside the CUNY system gathered as friends of the Hall of Fame actually some years ago. Now it's been changed to Save Gould, but to work with the college and CUNY to do what we can to save. Yeah.
You gave a great tour. Are you still doing tours?
Oh yeah, there's tours all the time. If anybody's interested in going up there, and open house, we have been working with open house the last couple of years. I think the last 2 years in a row, the campus has been on the open house tour in October. So that's a good way to do it. But there are tour guides from the college at any time if people want to go up and walk through. Oh, yes, we should mention in the time we have left, correct. It's actually a very interesting destination, not only for the classics, but in the 60s, NYU, before the decline and fall, as it were, Breuer was hired to do some buildings on campus, which are there, and some of which, not all of them, are city landmarks. So for mid-century modern fans, you've also, you've got those guys right next, literally just down the block from the library. And then you have the Stern as a sort of, what do you call it, post-classical or something like that. So it's a very interesting architectural destination that way. Good point, thank you. You're so focused on the classical, you forget that there's also this incredible mixture up there.
There is a event planner kind of presentation, not presentation, but conference where a whole bunch of places, hotels and stuff.
Right.
If you give me your card, I'll send you the information, and then you can contact them, and then maybe you can get a table at the next one.
Yes. A lot of it is circulation. But you know what? It takes money to make money. So what I've said to our gang at Gould is, we need to have a budget line for circulation, right? Because it costs money to go to events, to meet people, to spread the word, and. So that's on the agenda as well. But in the event planning community, I think this is a very, very interesting spot for them because they don't know about it. And they're always looking, right? They're always looking for some new, exotic, or beautiful spot to do events. And you've got one right here. It's just sitting there waiting for you. Anyway, thanks, everybody. Appreciate it. And let me know if you have any special. Dan, my fellow Bronxite and Bronx preservationist.
Is there an ongoing organization or way that we can keep in touch with this?
Yes.
Follow it?
Yeah. SaveGouldLibrary.com. Yeah, SaveGouldLibrary.com. Or on the web.
How do you spell Gould?
Gould. Oh, who was Gould? I didn't even. Jay Gould, the robber baron, great railroad baron. Actually, sorry, his daughter donated the money in his honor after his death at that time to build the original building. Yeah, I believe her name was Helen Gould Shepherd, something like that. Yeah. So Right, but naming opportunities are welcome, and I'm sure we can work something out. You know, it could be Gould hyphen your name here. Although there are interesting problems with that too. What happened to Philharmonic Hall? We should have such a problem. I'm translating from the Yiddish. We should have such a problem. But what happened at Philharmonic Hall? Or Avery Fisher Hall, as it was called? Remember? They need to raise a whole lot of money, right? Like $500 million to renovate. And David Geffen, the record producer and so on, came along. He said, here's $100 million, but you got to take Fisher's name off the building and put my name on. Kind of ouch, but they did it. It's a $100 million gift, speaking of major gift. But we should have such a problem. It would be nice to deal with this kind of problem, but we'll see. Anyway, thank you.